and welcome back to another episode, everyone. I have a few announcements to make, and before I make those announcements, if you are new here, hi and welcome. My name is Jessica, aka the Sacred Rebel, and if you are basically a returning veteran, thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. I really appreciate the likes, the shares, and the comments too. And I am forever grateful for your continuing support. Now, for the announcements. First announcement will be this podcast is going to be going down, not a rabbit hole, but it's going to be going down another route with what these next several episodes are going to be. Because I've been making some personal changes in my life and learning some new things. And as I evolve, the podcast will evolve. And part of these personal changes would be talking about moon cycles, hormones for the females, and womb healing. And that is WOMB for those who are trying to figure out what I'm saying because of my speech impediment. And we are going to talk about connecting and creating with the divine feminine energy, so you won't always have to be constantly sitting in the masculine energy, because if you're taking action all the time, you're just going to burn yourself out. And I'm not sure how many men listen to my podcast, and sorry that these next several changes are not going to really be pertaining to you, the male audience. But if you know a woman, if you have a woman or know a woman in your life that can benefit from this podcast, why not share it with her? And also, guys can definitely create, they can connect with their feminine side, because the feminine is the creation energy and the energy of action is the divine masculine energy. So this could be, certain episodes, if it's not talking about moon cycles and estrogen, it could be a win for you. But that's the first announcement. Second announcement is going to be, I am looking to rebrand myself. I don't know when, sooner, later. The name will change from Sacred Rebel Healing to something different, and it will come to me eventually. And I'm just going to vibe out with it and feel out into the universe, put my feelers out there. If anyone has any suggestions, feel free to throw your name into the goblet of fire. Nice little Harry Potter reference. But other than that, let's get into this episode. With this episode, I want to touch on a topic that can be slightly touchy. I want to talk about generational traumas, especially on the women's side of the family. And I speaking about the women's side of the family because I know my generational trauma is rooted with the women. So, what is a generational trauma? A generational trauma is something detrimental that happened that is greatly upsetting, that could have happened many, many moons ago, many, many decades ago in your ancestral line, and it still pops up in every generation, and you might even be experiencing it right now if you haven't noticed. It's the same energetic habits and decisions that are being made based off that trauma. So if we look at biology, you know how animals often know where to go and what to do, probably like a few hours after they're born. It's because things are encoded in their DNA. They have the DNA knowledge of, okay, this is safe, this is not safe. Okay, I'm going to go in this direction, not that direction. Not to say that a lot of things are encoded in their DNA that they just automatically know. I mean, obviously, they have to have their parent to teach them. Well, most animals do. Animals that basically normally just like turtles, sea turtles, when the mom lays an egg and leaves them on the beach and the mom goes back to sea and the sea turtles hatched and they gotta make it to the water, that's DNA encoding right there. They know that they need to get to the water. They already have that knowledge in their DNA. But some animals need to be taught some things, others don't. It's mainly going to be encoded. The main part of this point of this is encoded in the DNA, and the same can be said for generational traumas. There are going to be some things that happened to our ancestor, a predecessor, that is going to be so deeply rooted in energy and in the DNA that it's going to pop up, and it pops up hard in each generation. And what happens is when a new generation pops up, they notice a choice, but they don't really think that, oh, this is a generational trauma. And they have a choice to either just continue on with it or to end it. And most of the time, it's continuation. And I'm going to give a good example of a couple of generational traumas that is occurring right now in my family. So, as always, using myself as an example. Now, my family's generational trauma is the women are very avoidant when it comes to talking about their problems. They're avoidant of talking about their problems. They're also avoidant when it comes to connecting with their own personal spirit. They're also very, very, they can't set boundaries. Right. They can't uphold the boundaries. The women also in my family believe in like just beating your ass for no apparent reason. Just like I could say that could be a generational trauma for everyone because of physical abuse, but it was really bad for the girls in my family, the physical abuse that occurred. And I've noticed in black families that the mothers would treat their sons like kings, but when it came to their daughters, they were the maids. They were just basically like, you are beneath my son, and that's it. And I've noticed the treatment of how black women treat their sons versus their daughters. And it was garbage. It was absolute garbage. And I don't know if it's because I know that it's a thing that happens, especially if your grandmother's, basically your mother's mother did it and their mother's mother's mother did it, and going back to great 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 grandmother basically treated her daughters like shit, and so they grew up thinking that this is okay, this is ingrained in their DNA. It stems from that. But as to why do a lot of black women treat their daughters, a lot of women in general treat their daughters like low class trash, I have no idea where it came from. I have zero clue. And of course, that shit does need to stop because it's like, again, it's trash. But how that part of generational trauma, that is basically a significant trauma, because I know for a fact that even though I love my grandmother, it was definitely rough with her growing up. Another trauma is on the female side of the family. We get diabetes and high blood pressure, and it's mainly in correlation to weight. And I notice how each female in my family looks, and they're all, except for a few cousins, they're all heavy set. and they all have high blood pressure and they all have diabetes. And that's why I'm a nutcase when it comes to my weight and stuff and me getting healthy, because I don't want to have diabetes. I've watched my grandmother and helped her with her insulin, take her medications, make sure she got to her appointments. I've already did that. I watched that for years growing up. And nobody wants to stick a needle in them 2, 3 times a day. I know I don't. I don't like needles, even though I'm cool with them in the moment. If I need to get some blood work done or if I'm getting a tattoo, we're cool. But to do this shit every day, nah. And some of these high blood pressure medications don't even really help you. They just make you bloated and more inflamed. So, like I said, it's a no for me, dog. I'm good on that. And so that is a generational trauma. That's another major one. And the last major one that I know of is that money, when it comes to money, it my family handles money terribly, and it's awful. Like, I've seen it in my aunt, I've seen it in my mama, I've seen it in my grandmother. I've seen it everywhere. They handle their money terribly. And they're also afraid of earning more past their potential. And and there's other things that I can touch on, basically, like connection with the spirit. A lot of people in my family lack connection with their spirit. They're just doing whatever, existent in complacency. But that right there, I think I'm done putting my family on blast. Before I get some phone calls from them like, why'd you say that? But you know it's true. but but yeah, that is some of my family's personal generational traumas, and it's been very prevalent. And generational traumas can continue to happen until a person makes a personal choice of saying, no, I am not going to do this. And also go through the personal changes in order to not do this. And a lot of people, how they break their generational curses or traumas, it looks different for each person. Some could basically start with, if there was abuse that was prevalent in the family, they can stop by not abusing others, not abusing themselves, and not abusing their kids. They could be like, no, I'm not going to raise my hand to my child. I know I said to myself personally, when I have kids, I'm not going to hit my child for being a kid. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit right there and course correct my child. And you can sit there and be like, well, it keeps your kids from going to jail. There's other ways to keep your kids but from going to jail, like talking to them, like teaching them emotional regulation, teaching them how to use their words efficiently and correctly in order to convey what they need and what they want, rather than just get the belt or the switch and crack on the ass. Like, no. Another way that people can heal their generational trauma is basically doing public service work, like doing service work. Like, you can volunteer to help in a hospital. You can volunteer to help those that are less fortunate. For the less fortunate, either it's here in America or overseas. You can get into like a career where you're basically being a public servant and like serving the people, helping them out and whatnot, giving back to the community. That's one way. And then there's another way where people have, women have decided to not have kids because they don't want to pass on their generational trauma. And I will admit, sometimes I wonder, do you not want to have kids because it's your own personal choice and you're enjoying your life and you just like it being just you or you and another adult and that's it? Or is it because you fear that you are going to repeat the same thing that your parents did, and vice versa? And if it's the latter, I do feel like that it's bypassing a little bit. I mean, it's still a personal choice. It's bypassing because it can potentially come up in the next life if you are avoiding something. Not to say that not having kids is an avoidant tactic, but not addressing the trauma itself, the fear, is avoiding. You might end up with like 4 kids in your next life, and you're struggling because you still have that fear in your heart about you being a good mom. But everybody's different, and everybody has different ways to healing your generational trauma. But it definitely starts with you not co-signing to what your ancestor co-signed to. Just because great 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 grandmother Jessie was scared about something that happened to her, back in like 1594, doesn't mean that you today have to carry that weight. And I do apologize if you are carrying the weight of the family, but it's not for you to carry, because that is the burden of generational traumas, is you're carrying the weight of the fears and woes of everyone before you on your back, and it's landing on your head. And the thing is that they don't know better. Our family didn't know better at the time, or how to handle things, because they didn't have the information that we have today. But again, it can end with you, and it can end with you just simply to start off by saying, no, I will not do that. To simply choose a different way. We all still have choices. I know sometimes it feels like we don't have a choice, but we do have a choice. You do have a choice in how you speak to other people, how you speak to yourself, how you speak to your own kids. You do have a choice in how to raise your own kids. Are you going to raise them by the belt, or are you going to drop that belt and just leave it be and talk to them? Raise them by words and books instead of your fists. Are you going to confront your fears by talking to your parents about what happened? And are you, or can you be okay if you can't get any satisfaction out from your parents? Can you get satisfaction with the fact that you are working on yourself, and you can show your work to the rest of your family by showing up for yourself and, expressing the results by living your life? That can happen too. Again, there's so many ways you can heal generational traumas. And I believe it's because we are in the age of Aquarius that for the last like 4 or 5 years, we have been made more aware than ever about the habits and subtle nuances that we do. And then we're just like, wait, hold it. Why am I acting this way? How did my mom act before, when she was growing up? How did my grandmother act? How did my grandmother's mother act? How did anyone else? You can go far back as much as you want, but you only really need to like take a look at the pattern of the family and the previous generation, and maybe like 2-3 generations before you see a pattern. You'll see a pattern. And then when that pattern is made clear to you, it's like an explosion in your head. Like the lights are on completely, and you're just like, holy shit, I'm just noticing this now. And generational traumas can be broken at any age, put it like that. you just have to make an agreement with yourself that I will not be doing this anymore. I am choosing a different path. I am going to be a better person from this day forward, and keep with it. Stick to it. Do your best to stick with it. And sometimes we might slip back. We're only human. Don't beat yourself up. The point is, you get right back up and be like, all right, let me get right back on top of my agreement and keep going forward. And that's all I got to say today about generational traumas. And I hope that the next person is healing their trauma and letting it be, and they can experience the ultimate joy and happiness during the journey. I know for myself that I am releasing a lot of things to help heal my dramas. I released a lot of fear last week when I meditated, and I'm going to continue to releasing a lot of fear and get better. Until next time, stay blessed, stay woke, and I'll catch you again. Bye.